All right, we got one after, so we will go ahead and get started. For anyone that hasn't met me or joined our webinars before, my name is Kendall Becker. I'm our fashion and beauty director here at Trendalytics. So we're bringing in a new webinar series, different from what we've done before, where we've typically done bigger quarterly webinars. This is the first of a new monthly series. You might be familiar with our top trends report, which is a very data heavy, data first report that we do ranking out the top trends of the month in women's wear, beauty, menswear, and in children's wear. So we're going to do a webinar series kicking off this month as the first one, coloring in a little bit more context, adding in all of that good qualitative storytelling into the data. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here and we will get started. All right, guys. So welcome to our first October 20 or to October. I'm jumping ahead already into fashion month. Our August 2025 top trends report. So as mentioned, we're going to go over the methodology real quick here, and then we'll get into each of our categories, looking at the top ranking, top trends, the terms that are populating, and as well as the write-ups or looking at the themes that go along with those trends. All right, so looking at our methodology here. So as I mentioned, this is one of our really data heavy reports. So using our AI powered platform, we're able to classify these different trend terms into different categories. So the ones that we're really wanting to look at in this report are emerging and safe bets. So as you can see over on our bell curve here, they're right at the beginning. So maybe they're just starting to be talked about. They're getting picked up in the press. There's some movement happening, but it's not all the way at 3 where peaking is. So there's still time to action on a lot of these trend terms. Okay, so first and foremost, to kick us off, we will dive into women's wear. So we can see over on the right side, we have our emerging and safe bet trends, as we mentioned. So when I go do this report, we look at a variety of factors that are causing to rank these terms really high. As you can see here, the data on or the growth numbers on the safe bet trends are going to be higher because they've been growing for quite a bit now, while emerging are still a little bit lower because it's just starting to get that inkling that ball is just rolling out here. So what we're looking at a few trends that I know that we've talked about in previous webinars and reports. For example, was gemstone jewelry. This is a really exciting, very vintage feeling one that had a lot going on within the fall winter runways. So excited to see that starting to resonate well. You can also see a lot of transitional period clothing start to be rising as well. So the lightweight trench coats. Also looking at there's a lot of play with silk lingerie going on and how you're styling that. I think it's really cool paired back to like denim looks awesome, or looking at the leather ballet flats. I think that thrown in there makes so much sense as well. And then also the minimalist tote bag being up 89% as well, where this is great that back to school season or back to the office. Maybe you're coming off of those summer hours and starting to head back. So looking for just a nice little refresh there. And then looking at our safe bet trends, what I thought was really interesting here was how accessories focused this was. And you can see some really big numbers like blue topaz jewelry being up nearly 3,000%. It's a crazy, crazy number. And amethyst jewelry and aquamarine jewelry as well. I want to throw in lastly with Hamsa hand necklace. All of these, as we talked about, we've been talking about this like a mythical bohemian sort of sensibility, and a lot of these stones they feel very natural, very bohemian. And then looking at like spiritual focused jewelry as well, and talisman jewelry was a big one that if you watched our macro trends webinar that I called out earlier this year in January. So interesting to see these start to resonate. And I think this very much makes sense with what we've been seeing online. If you guys saw all of Dua Lipa's birthday posts in Ibiza, she was wearing a lot of blue topaz and like layered jewelry, and it felt very boho cool. All right, so we're going to dive into then our 3 themes, which after we get that big list of trending terms, we'll then break them down into storylines to help you guys better understand it and just tie all those commonalities together. So the first one here is still it's a Jet 2 holiday, which Euro summer is not over yet. I'm here to second that. I'm leaving to Portugal right after this. So we're still looking at these end of summer trends that are performing well. So we're kind of thinking two things at once. We're getting these early fall reads, but we're also still focusing on those last minute searches to be able to find what we want to take on these end of summer trips. For example, silk head wraps are up 221% to last year. This has been a huge accessory, whether it's tied again around the head, but we're also seeing this tied on tote bags and used in cool different manners. And of course, as we mentioned, that silk scarf in our newsletter the other week, tied around the waist, has been a really big styling cue that's been growing, very in like the it girl circle as well. Looking at some of the big trends that we've been seeing in Europe this season, the sheer midi skirt, so maybe that's a crochet or a really cool mesh, a sequin maxi dress, and then also the Pucci dress is really on the rise. There was a great article that I want to say it was the New York Times or The Cut wrote about how the Pucci dress absolutely boomed this summer, and it almost felt, I don't want to say no longer cool, but it felt very done in one way. And with that being said, I do think that this is still very interesting because we've been looking at a lot of nostalgia and how it's influencing fashion in general, but really I'm interested in this resort wear season and how it feels very like we called out, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on that Netflix show. Oh, Palm Royale. We called that out. I want to say it was in our resort webinar from last year, looking at early 2025. And I think this is still continuing to get that very vintage nostalgia feel within our resort wear. It feels very chic, but also very fun. And I think that that sort of print can be pushed even further with different approaches to an abstract print. Okay, so a non-stop nostalgia. This is hands down the Gen Z's consumers' favorite trend, where we had a little bit of a dip of early aughts, taking a rest, and we saw this come back into the 90s, and then just decades overall of wherever you're finding that really cool thrifted item. But I would say that the 90s and early aughts are having a moment here as we look at the bandage dress going viral. This has been up 225% in searches to last year. And we've also been seeing so many ponchos and capes, lots of different terms. We're calling out the plaid poncho here. That's up 196%, but seeing a lot of variations of the poncho and the cape. And I'm seeing it non-stop from like, let's see, even I saw it at like Hollister just posted on Instagram a poncho the other day. It's really, bringing back that moment in time. So get ready to lock in. Lastly, we're also looking at the Kate Spade handbag is at 402%, and the bowler bag up 330%. So these are some pretty big numbers out here. Lots of variations again of these nostalgic feeling handbags. And I think this is very cool for like a back to campus or that younger consumer. Okay, so our early fall reads. As you mentioned, these are very fall winter 2025 runway inspired, talking about that cape top being up 112%. And then also scarf sweaters up 273%. Those are really, really big on the runways. And we've started to see that scarf as well on a lot of guest of wedding dresses this season. And I think this is just continuing. Looking back at last fall, we started to see that scarf sweater just start to make its mark in more forward markets. But I think this year we're really going to be blowing it out of the water and especially coming in a variety of different iterations like that cape top, the poncho, the scarf sweater. It's all really that same sort of idea, just done in a different lens. Getting into the fold over boots, another really big one that made a splash during festival season and is going to continue on. And then as well, we've been seeing so much suede resonate, and I'm really excited to see this continue. For example, the suede crossbody bag is what we called out here, feels again very back to campus, but so many different suede terms. resonating well and just accelerating within the Trendalytics platform. So I would begin to think that, of course, suede has been around. We've been talking about it since last fall, but what are those different colorations or details that we can use to take it to the next level? Okay, so we will get into men's here. Looking at our list of terms. So we have a lot, we always say within menswear, those little extra details is really what takes it further. It's not so much reinventing that wheel, but looking at different colors, for example. So a men's no collar shirt, looking at a men's cowl neck sweater, all of those being starting to resonate. We also see a lot of play happen within texture. So a men's mohair sweater is one that we've seen rise, or even some of those smaller details like a studded shoe might be of interest and looks like it's growing out here. Looking at our safe bets, I would say these are also very accessories forward. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. I have a whole theme on that as we dive into the menswear terms here. All right. So, first things first, seen in print. So, as we just mentioned, it's not necessarily about reinventing that wheel, but maybe it's about updating with a print. So, I know classic, if you are in New York City walking around Midtown, you know the light blue button down. We've all seen it. We've all seen it in packs. But how can we continue to update, taking those tried and true silhouettes and bringing it to the next level? So one trend that was really resonating well all summer was different variations of stripes for men. So in this report, we called out striped shorts. We're continuing to do well, but we really saw the striped pants, the striped shirt all summer. It was all about stripes, which feels very classic, very Hamptons out east sort of aesthetic, but interesting nonetheless. And then we also got into some more emerging trends like the men's houndstooth shirt, up 69% to last year. This feels a little bit more forward, a little bit more fashion guide to me, reviving such a classic heritage print, but pretty cool to see that growing. And then, of course, seeing plaid in all sorts of variations, whether it's a tie, a flannel, a very tried and true update that for the incoming season makes a lot of sense. All right, so this one calling on the gram. So looking at more of these trending styles that are certainly taking hold of menswear and growing more and more, I feel like the more conversations I'm having with my guy friends, they bring up that they're actually really following like different cool men's influencers and being more open about it than I think they have in the past. And I get questions all the time of like, who should I follow? Who's cool? Is this an awesome jacket or is this weird? What should I do here? And it's cool to see that a lot of men are taking interest in trying different things. And I think something that is like a great one, for example, is like the suede bomber jacket. Doesn't have to feel so out there, but it does give that little bit of a fashion element that they've certainly seen on Instagram before, whether it's somebody, an influencer posting or something like GQ that they know and trust and have seen the brand name for years and years. The men's V-neck sweater vest. This is a 401% to last year. So a really big and meaty number looking at that growth. We've seen this layered, even with like a t-shirt to be a little bit more casual, or some really forward guys in the downtown crowd are going shirtless under it and like, hey, whatever works for you. But that's definitely a growing one. Alongside the men's cropped sweatshirt and then a styling cue like double denim. All right. So, speaking of jewelry, we have been seeing a lot of terms be taking place that aren't just watches. There's certainly moments in time where we see every variation of watch term starting to resonate within the platform. And I really have been noticing lately that bracelets have been taking off. So the men's white gold bracelet is up 167%. Really cool chain bracelets. And then a men's diamond bracelet. I've been seeing so many tennis bracelets on male celebrities and influencers and even out in the wild a little bit more. So I think that that's a pretty cool one to be looking at. And then, of course, black onyx jewelry, always a very menswear forward. You can see it's up 837% right now. So, talk about a meaty number. This isn't just bracelets, this is jewelry, all encompassing in general. But I think it's a very welcoming stone for that guy who maybe is only wearing a watch and he wants to take it to the next level. And so I think that that's a really, really cool one to be watching. All right. So getting into beauty here. So we have a big variety going on, I think, in beauty versus the other ones. It felt very like, hey, we're seeing a lot of accessories right here. This is running the gamut. So we have been seeing, which again, we're going to talk about this in just a moment, but a big wellness focus that's touching both supplements and also the types of cosmetics and skincare, or even products like SPF that we're going after. So you can see across the board here, we're looking at vitamin C supplements starting to rise, as well as vegan mascara. That's a quick jump out there. And then so many terms with both within eyes and hair. I would say those are the categories where a lot of trend terms are starting to resonate. So certainly categories to be keeping your mind, to be keeping your, yeah, be keeping your eyes on, no pun intended. Um, but definitely a big shift back to eyes after we've been talking a lot about lips lately. All right. So, first and foremost is how to achieve a sculpted look. And so, this may be through makeup, different hacks like a cheekbone contour being up 175% in searches, as well as following, when we see some of these more looks driven trends that especially pop up in beauty. A great thing to think about as a merchant is what are those tools that she needs to achieve that look. So, looking at something like the contour makeup brush, is a great way to be able to support that. And same goes for something like hair as well, to be able to think what are those tools, those extra little steps, to be able to be have her be able to achieve that look, whether you're putting together, a merchandising assortment strategy, or putting that even into an email newsletter and calling out that aesthetic, but then linking back those products that she really needs to achieve it. Um, Moving on here into something that this is very TikTok originated is volufiline. This is up 100% to last year. It makes its cycles from TikTok shop promo. Whether it works or not, I think that's very questionable, but it's said to build facial fat back up. So if you're starting to see any losses, popping it on at the end of the night, mixing it up with an oil-based moisturizer is supposed to help you build back up. Again, whether that's true or not, or a TikTok shop gimmick, I'll let you decide. And then lastly, there's been a lot of talk about the harmful effects of Botox and filler. And some people are jumping straight into facelifts earlier and earlier, which is a very, very interesting. But you can see searches are for a mid facelift, for example, are up 100 or 100, 85% to last year. And I think with more and more wellness focused conversations within the industry starting to rise, we're going to continue to see that more and more. All right, so eyes on shadow. So we have a lot of eyeshadow terms popping back up, and it has been a minute since we've seen a lot of interest in eyeshadow. For a moment, like I mentioned, it was a lot about the lips. Then we really moved up to cheeks. And then we started to talk eyes, where it was a big focus on liner and mascara. And I would say this is like the first month where shadow blew that out of the water. So bold eyeshadow looks up 349% to last year. Really big number. The pastel eyeshadow is one that was huge on the runways for fall. I think it brought a really nice, like icy tone, which then brings us into the frosted eyeshadow being up 387% and gives a very nostalgic feel. So tapping into a few different trends here. And that always is what really makes a term go further, as if it's hitting a few different buckets, like nostalgia. We're also talking about eyes again. That's going to really light up a trend term. All right. And then manicures. So previously we were seeing a lot of bold manicures. And this summer, minimalist manicures were like the cool girl go-to. The minimalist manicures in general being up 235%, with the most, I would say the biggest one that I saw talked about online within the press, within influencers, was a yellow nail polish or a yellow manicure. That was kind of the new neutral, moving on past that ballet pink. And then for more of the trend focused girl, of course, we know we saw so many polka dots this summer, and polka dot nails even being one that was beginning to resonate more. within the market, which is really, very fun, very whimsical, very cute. And then also talking a lot about nail health. I know even in my friend circles, this has been a huge topic of conversation of what type of gel are you doing? How often are you going? Have you tried press-ons yet? So looking at different ways to preserve that nail health, like a long wear nail polish that doesn't keep you running back to the salon. And at the end of the day, very recession core within that as well. Um, you can see that growth is pretty major at 197%. Okay, and finally, we have children's wear. As we know, characters are always the most important part of kids, especially when it comes to tees, to knitwear, leggings, all of that good stuff. So, definitely seeing our characters and graphics holding up a lot of these emerging trends. And then a lot of back to school fashion as well. Of course, looking at like sweatshirts, the sweatpants, and then popping into taking that inspiration from women's wear, looking at polka dots and even the barrel lake pant becoming something that's been important within kids and starting to pop up too. So lots of really cute terms all coming in once again. All right. So something I thought was so interesting, I called this out as just winter already, is of course we know the back to school season. It's a really big time to stock up for fall and winter. And surprisingly, I saw so many feeling like colder weather trends really resonating even past transitional items. So like boys snow boots, where 47% is it's a decent number. It's not 800 like we've talked about with some of the others, but enough where it's ranking a lot higher than some of the other boys' footwear terms is incredibly interesting. And then looking at faux fur boots to be coming up 122% this early in the season is really significant. So that's really quite interesting. And then other more winter worthy pieces like the girls' peacoat, that's up 109, 91%. And the fuzzy backpack, looking at like cool Sherpas and textures here, being up 447 or 474% to last year. So again, a really big meaty number when it comes to that one, and feels, of course, very timely because it is in that backpack. All right, so getting into the cool kids. So these are some of our more trend forward terms, both popping from getting that inspiration from women's wear and menswear. The patched bomber jacket. I think this is so fun. As you can see in our picture here, you can see those really cute patches that I think can be very kid-like and show a lot of creativity, whether it's one that they were buying or doing a DIY. I think it's really cute for a children's wear market. Looking at fun sandals like cork shoes. And then, of course, as we mentioned, those prints are always important. Looking at the polka dot set, that's up 520%. A really fun one that, of course, as we mentioned, was popular within women's wear and beauty as well. And then the cow print pant was a really fun one that I think is really, really great for children's wear. All right, so still looking at ballet core. First, this was so big in the women's wear market last year, especially within activewear. And seeing this trickle down to really cute or girly girl pieces, like the baby doll top is up 134%. And then specifically the drop waist dress was so huge within women's wear this spring and summer, but having it specifically with girls beginning to rise. Again, getting that mommy and me aesthetic, very cute, always a winner. And then things like the ballet skirt and ballet slippers performing well over here too. Right. And that wraps us up. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you resonated here with this new format that we are introducing. We're always open to hearing questions, suggestions, all of that good stuff. And I'm going to pop you over to our last slide. If you would like to get connected, if you aren't yet a Trendalytics client, we can dive you into the platform a little bit more and for you to also access this full report that's full of even more trend terms that resonated each month. It's one of our monthly reports that comes out. Feel free to send us an email or connect. Then we will do, let me see our time. We have a few minutes to do questions. If anyone is interested, happy to do a quick Q&A. Okay. I love this one. So we got a question on, are you seeing the sneakerina trend evolve into kids for back to school? Yes, absolutely. I think this is such a good kids trend. And I think it makes so much sense, right? Talking about that ballet core, how it's evolving into kids. And I don't have the number on me, but that sneakerina number is so good. It is really, really incredible. And I think realistically, to me, I think longevity is such an important part of trend, more so within the women's wear market because we're holding onto those items for so long versus within children's wear, they're growing out of it, right? So I think those sweet trends that don't necessarily feel timeless, the sneakerina within a women's wear is only going to hang around for so long until our new comfort shoe is brought in. But I think within kids, this is a huge win because I think it's just so fun. It's girly, it's a little cheekier. So I think that's just a total win for that market. All right. Scrolling down, sticking with footwear, fringe boots was asked twice in here. How are we looking at that in general and for kids? Um, So fringe boots, yes, I think there's a lot of play happening within boots and details are that driving factor right now. So whether it is that fold over, adding in the fringe, I think that works better for a younger customer. As mentioned, I think it's very nostalgic and Gen Z really resonates with nostalgia. So I do think that that's a great option there. And then continuing on with this little bit of like a tougher boot, I think the moto boot and different versions of it are certainly here to stay. So playing with studs, hardware, buckles, I think that's only going to continue on, especially as we do have sweet trends in apparel. You always need that juxtaposition to toughen up the styling and make it cool, right? So I do think that that's going to be a great one. Okay, let's see. Oh, I love this question. This is a great one. Is there a material type that will have its moment in the fall across men's, women's, and kids? Okay, so loaded question. I do want to answer this in a general stance as well, looking at overarching markets. I do think that these more nostalgic fabrics, as we mentioned, are really coming back. Looking at the fall winter runways, both within menswear and women's wear, it felt very 70s, 80s. And so a big, really cool fabric that I've been seeing show up small way so far, but excited to see it pop in for this fall. And I think even into next fall is jacquard. A lot done. I've seen it in a few purses and then also within cool jackets that are made to look vintage, but aren't quite. And I think that's a really interesting one to look at. A big thing I've been calling out for women's is the evolution of bohemian and how it feels a little bit more witchy and dark. Coming with that, I feel like velvet is going to have its moment once again, including suede you can put in there. And then lastly, with leather, another macro trend that I'm looking to explore more in 2026, started to originate within festival was this dystopian feel and a lot of distressed knitwear being done in a plethora of different ways from extreme to not so much. But then playing back to like different leather boots and leather straps and accessories. And I think that that's going to be very cool for 2026. And I'm excited to do a little bit more research on that, but definitely something to be watching here. All right, guys. Oh my gosh, we got so many questions. Um, what's a trend? Okay. Talking about, okay, so there's a question here about vests for women's wear, and do I see it being big for spring, summer 2026? Yes and no. I want to float this out a bit more to the evolution of suiting. A big thing that I'm seeing is, of course, like, firstly, let's start us with that shell top. So some people are wearing it where it feels very like a vest. And then we're seeing it evolve where it feels more like a top with a higher neckline. And then starting to see more within blazers, vests, more of a fitted approach once again. And I would even tell you guys, I was in PacSun over the weekend, and there was button-down shirts that were fitted, and I have not seen that, since probably I was in middle school, and that was something interesting to see. So looking at more of these tailored and suited items, bringing the waistline back in. As you guys remember, I'm sure there was like that blip of peplums that started to rise up, and I didn't really catch so much, but I do see that sentiment now coming into blazers, suited tops, and vests. And then again, how can you layer it to still keep that cool factor so it doesn't look so fitted and buttoned up? But I hope that helps a little bit there. All right. Oh, okay. I'm going to answer one more within beauty. What do you think about the niche and luxury fragrances trend? This is one of my personal favorite trends, and also just one that I've been watching grow over the last 2 years. And it's been one of my favorites to watch evolve. I think this niche and luxury fragrance trend is just so important and blowing the market out of the water because okay, so looking back like 2 years on TikTok, we really started to see the rise of, there's always been an it fragrance, but fragrance influencers becoming such a thing was really fascinating. I think looking, of course, as we know, like the Santel 33 of it all. What was it? The K Lal, I always butcher the name, Kayali, and the Delina, what's that like really sugary vanilla one? Um, all in there, and they were duping each other on like who could do the most vanilla ever. And while I think that that was a great moment, it's then set us up. What we started to see was a rise and then like pheromone perfume and make your own perfume terms. And what that signals to me is like, okay, when something blows up so big, we're really intrigued by it until we walk into a restaurant and everybody smells like Santal 33. So we're starting to, okay, we want that originator factor to come in here. And you can apply this to any trend ever, but this is a nice, easy one for fragrance in general. Not everybody's going to go out there and make their own perfumes. And then as a brand, how can we expand on that? How is that marketable and scalable? So looking at more of these niche luxury brands and different fragrances, I think is incredibly important. A lot of storytelling then comes into play here of, okay, well, where did this come from? Was it sourced from, somewhere out in like, are we getting these lemons from the Amalfi Coast and, whatnot? So adding that storytelling element, it also creates a lot of beautiful visual opportunities and just letting different fragrances become a star because everyone kind of wants to now discover like the next cool fragrance and get ahead of it before it is that Santal 33. So lots and lots of different notes resonating within our trend terms that rise within fragrance. Even in general, when I look at beauty as a whole, fragrant notes have been blowing up over the course of this year. So people are really building up that knowledge, which then tells me that they're able to shop more of those niche fragrances. So I think it's an exciting time for that market. But okay, guys, thank you so much for being so engaged and adding in all these amazing questions. We will, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out at hello@trendalytics.co. We're happy to connect and connect you with our team of trend experts and take it from there. But otherwise, we'll see you back here next month. Thank you.